The cold air hit me first. Standing in front of the open refrigerator, the usual comforting hum was replaced by nothing. Just empty white shelves staring back. Even the half-empty ketchup bottle was gone. My wife, Eleanor, was slumped at the kitchen table, her hands trembling slightly as she traced the rim of an empty mug. The silence in the house wasn't peaceful, it was heavy, suffocating. It pressed down, thick with the ghosts of angry words and the slam of the front door just an hour ago. Our children. Our son Mark and our daughter Chloe. They hadn't just left. They had purged. Like we were some kind of infestation. They'd stood right there where I'm standing now, their faces tight with a chilling sort of righteousness, and uttered the words that now echoed louder than any shout in this crushing quiet. How could they look at us, their parents, the ones who gave them everything we had, and call us parasites? The word felt like acid, burning through years of love and sacrifice. Parasites. Left with nothing. How did we get here? Being a dad, that was my whole world. Eleanor and I, we weren't fancy people. I spent 40 years in construction, dust, sweat, and long days. She managed the home like a fortress of love and picked up part-time work whenever she could, always putting the kids first. Our house wasn't grand, just a simple 3-bedroom place on a street where kids still played outside. But it was ours, filled with memories. We didn't save for cruises or new cars. Every spare dime went into the kids' futures. Braces for Chloe's crooked smile, helping Mark with his first clunker car, scraping together tuition fees. We wanted them to have launching pads, not anchors. We thought we'd done a good job. Mark climbed the ladder in finance, sharp suit and sharper ambition. Chloe made waves in marketing, creative and driven. We bragged about them, maybe too much, beaming with pride. We pictured retirement as slow mornings, maybe fixing up an old camper van, definitely spoiling grandkids someday. Life felt earned. Solid beneath our feet. Mark, even as a kid, always needed the best trainers. Chloe always compared her grades, needing to be top. Small things we thought then. Just ambition. And then there was Arthur. Our oldest friend. Practically a brother I chose. He lived simply, renting a small flat over Chen's dry cleaners, fixing things for people, always pottering in the community garden. Never married, no kids of his own. He seemed content, but we always worried he was just getting by. We'd have him over for Sunday dinners religiously. Eleanor would pack him enough leftovers for 3 days, and I'd sometimes slip him a 20, telling him it was a loan he never had to repay. He always tried, pulling out a crumpled 5 later, which I'd refuse with a laugh. He was just Arthur. Quiet, kind, genuinely happy for our kids' successes, never a hint of envy. He was the steady, unassuming background hum to our family life. A comforting constant. We felt a bit protective of him, honestly. The first tremor that shook our solid ground happened about 5 years back. Mark showed up one evening, buzzing with energy, waving spreadsheets like victory flags. A tech investment, he called it. Ground floor, huge potential, life-changing returns. He needed capital, more than the banks would offer someone his age, he explained smoothly. He laid out projections talking about securing his future, and then he lowered his voice, adding meaningfully, "And yours too, Mom, Dad." He knew about our nest egg. Decades of my aching back and Eleanor's careful budgeting, tucked away for retirement. He also knew the house had little equity left after we'd helped him out of a jam years prior. We were hesitant. It was everything. Our safety net. Eleanor, bless her intuition, felt uneasy. "It just feels fast, John," she'd whispered that night. But I saw fire in Mark's eyes. My son reaching for the stars. I pushed her doubts aside. "We have to support him, Ellie. This is his big shot." We emptied the accounts. We handed over our future. The relief and gratitude on his face felt real then. He hugged us tight, promising repayment, plus generous interest within 12 months. Felt like the right thing to do. What parents do. Then, maybe 8 months later, before Mark's promised windfall even had a chance to seem late, Chloe came to us. Her marketing career was taking off, she beamed, but she dreamed bigger. Her own agency. She needed startup funds, office lease, computers, branding. Another significant sum. Mark's repayment was already being delayed, market fluctuations, he'd mumbled vaguely on the phone. We gently explained to Chloe, our hearts sinking, that the well was dry. Her face crumpled. The raw disappointment hit us like a physical blow. Then came the suggestion, dropped casually, "What about the house? Could you maybe leverage it?" Or just temporarily put our names on the title? Strictly as a formality for the bank. Alarm bells should have deafened us. But seeing her look so crushed after we'd already poured everything into Mark, we couldn't bear it. We didn't sign the title over, not then. But we went to the bank. We took out a second mortgage, swallowing the high interest rate. We gave the money to Chloe. Her thank you felt thinner this time. Less eye contact. That night, the silence in the house felt different. Colder. The first hairline crack had appeared in our foundation, and we were too afraid to look too closely. After that second loan, the dynamic shifted, slowly at first, then with unnerving speed. Mark's investment remained perpetually on the cusp of exploding, requiring small, frequent infusions. Just need to cover this operating cost until the deal closes, Dad. Chloe's agency was supposedly booming, yet she'd call venting about cash flow crises, hinting about upcoming bills. Their visits became transactional. A quick hello, then the inevitable pivot. So, I was wondering if you could maybe spot me. We started noticing the discrepancies. Mark pulled up in a gleaming new SUV, company car, he'd said quickly. Chloe posted photos from a ridiculously expensive spa retreat. Networking, she'd claimed, scrolling past the picture hurriedly. When we gently probe, asking how they managed these luxuries while simultaneously pleading poverty, they'd get defensive. Irritated even. You don't understand the pressures, Dad. Mark snapped once. Sometimes you have to spend money to make money, Chloe retorted sharply, her eyes avoiding ours. One Sunday they were both over, a rare occasion. We'd made pot roast their favorite. They picked at their food, checking their phones constantly. Then Mark cleared his throat. Mom, Dad, we need to talk about this place. He gestured around our familiar living room. It's a lot for you too. The upkeep, the bills, maybe it's time to downsize? Find a nice little condo somewhere? Chloe chimed in immediately. Yeah, it makes sense financially. This is a big asset just sitting here. Our home. Not a home, an asset. The way they looked at us, it wasn't concern. It was calculation. Eleanor's hand found mine under the table, her grip tight. Later, after they'd left, leaving barely touched plates behind, Eleanor whispered, "They want the house, John." I didn't want to believe it. Couldn't believe it. These were our children. But the cold knot of dread in my stomach told me she was right. Even Arthur noticed the change on his next visit. He found Eleanor quietly crying over the utility bills. He didn't push, just put a comforting hand on her shoulder. Tough month? He asked softly. We just nodded, unable to voice the ugly truth. How could we tell our kind, struggling friend that our own children were slowly bleeding us dry? The shame was eating us alive. The final blow came suddenly, brutally. Mark called, his voice frantic. The investment was collapsing, he yelled. He needed a massive amount now or faced lawsuits, maybe even jail. He blamed us for encouraging him. The only solution, he insisted, was the house. Use it as collateral. Full stop. Hours later, Chloe called, sobbing hysterically. A major client had defaulted, her business was ruined, she cried. She backed Mark's plan, put the house in their names temporarily, just to secure a joint emergency loan. We promise, Daddy, we'll sign it right back as soon as this is sorted. Cross our hearts. They worked us from both sides, a relentless barrage of panic, guilt, and veiled threats. Don't you love us? Do you want to see us ruined? We were exhausted, terrified for them, still clinging to a shred of hope that this time, this would be the end of it. They had a lawyer ready, Mark's friend, quick and efficient. He glossed over the fine print, waved away our questions. Standard stuff, just helps the kids out. We were fools. Tired, desperate fools. In that sterile office, under the flickering fluorescent lights, we signed the papers. We signed away our home, our security, our last piece of solid ground. The change was instantaneous. Like a switch flipped. The desperate calls stopped. Our messages went unanswered. Then the official letters began arriving. Overdue notices for the mortgage, the one we'd taken out for Chloe. Final demands for utility bills. Panic clawed at my throat. We called, texted, pleaded. Finally, Mark picked up. His voice was unrecognizable. Flat. Cold. Yeah. What is it? I asked about the bills, the house. He sighed, a sound of pure annoyance. Look, Dad, the situation has changed. We're handling the finances now. Since the house is legally ours, we'll cover the main mortgage, but you'll need to start paying rent. And covering your own expenses, obviously. Rent? In our own home? But Mark, the promises, you said, he laughed. A chilling, empty sound. Oh, grow up. That was just talk. Business is business. You should have read the fine print. Click. He hung up. That Saturday they appeared. No call, no warning. They used the key we'd given them years ago. They walked in not like children visiting home, but like landlords inspecting a property. Mark stood, arms crossed, surveying the room with a distasteful sneer. Chloe held a notebook, tapping a pen impatiently. Right, she announced, her voice crisp and businesslike. We've run the numbers. Your combined pensions barely cover the property taxes and the secondary loan payments we're now saddled with. No mention that the loan was for her. Frankly, Mark interjected, his gaze sweeping over us with utter disdain, you living here isn't financially viable. We can't keep subsidizing your lifestyle. Subsidizing us? My blood turned to ice. Eleanor let out a small, wounded sound. This is our home, she whispered, tears tracing paths down her pale cheeks. We gave you everything we had. Where would we go? Chloe rolled her eyes dramatically. Oh, spare us the melodrama, mother. You had your comfortable life. Time to face reality. Maybe look into low-income housing. Mark took a step closer, his face hardening into a mask of pure, unadulterated cruelty I'd never seen before. We've carried you long enough. You cling to us, draining our resources. You're like parasites. He spat the word out. Parasites. It landed in the space between us, heavy and toxic. Before the shock even registered, before we could form a response, they moved towards the kitchen. Might as well take the groceries, Chloe said matter-of-factly, opening the fridge. No sense letting them go to waste. They efficiently emptied the shelves, the pantry, bagging up the food we'd bought with our dwindling pension money. Like bailiffs seizing assets. At the door, Mark paused, looking back not at us but at the house. We'll be in touch regarding the rent and eviction proceedings if necessary, he stated coldly. Then they were gone, the door clicking shut behind them, leaving us in a silence that screamed, surrounded by the wreckage of our lives, the taste of betrayal bitter in our mouths. We were utterly alone. Completely destroyed. Or so we believed. The next few days were a blur of gray despair. Hunger wasn't just a pang, it was a constant, grinding ache in my belly. We found a forgotten tin of soup, half a packet of stale biscuits. We shared them, rationing every bite. The house grew cold, the silence punctuated only by Eleanor's quiet weeping and the growl of my empty stomach. Pride kept us from knocking on neighbors' doors. Shame prevented us from calling my sister miles away. I felt hollowed out, a husk of the man I used to be. A provider, a protector. Now nothing. Less than nothing in the eyes of my own children. One afternoon, the hunger gnawing fiercely, staring at the last 2 crackers on a plate, my gaze drifted to the phone. Arthur. What could he do? Offer a sympathetic ear? Maybe lend us $20 for bread and milk? It felt pathetic asking him for help when we'd always been the ones helping him. But desperation erodes pride. My fingers trembled as I dialed the familiar number. He picked up almost immediately. John? Everything okay? You sound... I tried to speak, to explain, but a sob choked me. The dam broke. Words tumbled out, disjointed, desperate. The house, the money, the lies, the empty fridge, the word. Parasites. I finished, gasping for breath, expecting awkward sympathy, maybe a promise to drop off a casserole. Instead, there was a sharp inhale on the other end. A pause that stretched, filled with a sudden, chilling intensity. Then Arthur spoke, his voice transformed. The gentle, hesitant tone was gone, replaced by something hard, cold, and utterly furious. John, he said, his voice dangerously quiet. Where are they now? Do you know? I mumbled I didn't. Okay. Don't move. Don't speak to them if they call. Don't do anything. I'm on my way. Right now. And he hung up. Not 20 minutes later, a car I'd never seen before, long, black, impossibly sleek, whispered to a stop at our curb. Arthur emerged from the passenger side. Same worn jeans, same faded polo shirt, but he moved differently. With purpose. With authority. He strode to the door, didn't even knock, just pushed it open. His eyes took in the scene, Eleanor huddled under a blanket on the sofa, looking frail and lost, the bare kitchen counters, my own gaunt face. His jaw tightened, his knuckles white. They did this? he breathed, his voice rough with disbelief and rage. I could only nod, shame washing over me again. He took a deep, steadying breath, his eyes locking with mine. John. Eleanor. There's something I should have told you a long time ago. He shifted uncomfortably. All these years, the small jobs, the cheap apartment, that wasn't necessity. It was choice. He hesitated, then plunged ahead. Back in my 20s, I started a small software company with a friend. We sold it about 15 years ago. Sold it for, well, let's just say I don't worry about money. He looked down, almost embarrassed. I'm not the person you thought I was, financially speaking. I like quiet. I value other things. He looked up again and the fire was back in his eyes. But this? What they've done to you? This is not quiet. This is cruelty. And it stops. Now. Arthur? Arthur? Billionaire? The world tilted. It seemed surreal. But the fury in his eyes, the absolute conviction in his voice, that was undeniably real. And in the deepest pit of my despair, a flicker of something fierce ignited. Hope. Help hadn't just arrived. It had arrived with the power of thunder. Arthur moved with the speed and precision of a general deploying troops. His phone was out, his voice low but commanding. Within the hour, 2 people arrived, a man, David, and a woman, Sarah, both exuding quiet competence in perfectly tailored suits, carrying expensive leather briefcases. My legal advisors, Arthur introduced them curtly. No nonsense. Arthur gave them the summary, his voice tight with controlled anger. Then Sarah turned to us, her gaze sharp but kind. Mr. and Mrs. Peterson, I know this is incredibly distressing. We need every detail. Every conversation, every transaction, every promise, every threat. Especially regarding the property transfer and the lawyer they involved. We started hesitantly, the shame still raw. But their professional calm, their focused questions gave us strength. We laid it all out, Mark's investment, Chloe's startup, the escalating demands, the emotional blackmail, the signing of the deed, the Parasites comment, the theft of our groceries. We unearthed old bank statements, the loan documents, anything we could find. David typed rapidly on a laptop, while Sarah listened, her expression growing grimmer. When we mentioned the lawyer Mark and Chloe had insisted we use, Sarah nodded slowly. As suspected. Clear conflict of interest, potential malpractice, failure to ensure independent advice, very serious. When we finally fell silent, exhausted but somehow lighter, Sarah and David exchanged a significant look. The evidence is overwhelming, Sarah stated, her voice firm. Elder financial abuse is crystal clear. Undue influence in the property transfer. Strong indicators of deliberate fraud regarding the initial sums obtained under false pretenses. Arthur's face was granite. Do whatever is necessary, Sarah. No limits. I want that house back in their names and I want every penny they stole accounted for. And I want them to understand consequence. While the lawyers worked, Arthur made other calls. Groceries appeared at our door, bags and bags of them. The heating clicked back on. A prepaid credit card was placed gently on the table. For immediate needs, Arthur said quietly, you focus on recovering. Let us handle the rest. Eleanor wept again, but this time they were tears of relief. The weight on our chests eased just slightly. It wasn't just about getting food back in the fridge anymore. It was about reclaiming our lives. It was about justice. The strategy Arthur's team devised was surgically precise. Sarah and David moved like lightning. They subpoenaed bank records that laid bare Mark's fictitious investment scheme, money flowing directly into luxury car payments and online trading accounts. They obtained invoices proving Chloe had inflated her business costs massively, pocketing the difference from the loan we secured. They got a sworn statement from a legal ethics expert confirming the gross misconduct of the lawyer who handled the deed transfer, Mark's supposed friend. The evidence was damning, irrefutable. Cease and desist letters were drafted, demanding the immediate return of the house title and repayment of a staggering sum, nearly $500,000, meticulously calculated from their deception. The letters starkly outlined the civil lawsuit and the imminent referral to the district attorney for criminal prosecution if they failed to comply within 72 hours. But Arthur felt a legal victory wasn't enough. He wanted accountability. Publicly. He picked up the phone, deliberately adopting his old, slightly hesitant, poor friend Arthur voice. He called Mark first, then Chloe. He expressed concern for us, suggested they all meet at our house, to figure out a path forward. He even hinted he might be able to scrape together a small monthly amount to help with our care. Their arrogance, their belief in his poverty and their own cleverness, was their downfall. They readily agreed, probably picturing a scenario where they could finalize our dependency, perhaps even squeeze more out of gullible old Arthur. They set the time, Sunday afternoon. Perfect. Arthur then made a few more calls. To my cousin Richard and his wife. To Eleanor's sister Carol. To the Millers, old neighbors who'd always gushed about our wonderful, successful children. He kept it vague. John and Eleanor are going through a tough time, could use some friendly faces around on Sunday. They all agreed, concerned. Sunday afternoon. The air in our living room crackled with nervous tension. Eleanor clutched my hand, her knuckles white. Arthur sat calmly in his usual armchair, a picture of deceptive placidity. Sarah and David were positioned discreetly in the dining room, door slightly ajar, documents neatly arrayed on the table. Our guests arrived, looking worried, offering quiet words of support, sensing something was amiss but not knowing what. Then, right on cue, Mark's ostentatious SUV glided to the curb, followed by Chloe's equally expensive sedan. They swaggered in, radiating an offensive level of smug self-satisfaction. They barely acknowledged us or the others. Arthur, Mark started, clapping his hands together impatiently. Good of you to step up. So, what's the big plan? Let's get this sorted. Chloe was already glancing at her watch. Arthur looked up, his expression unreadable. Actually, Mark, Chloe, he said, his voice level. Before we talk about my contribution, maybe you should have a word with Sarah and David in the dining room. He nodded towards the door. Confusion flickered across their faces, replaced by dawning suspicion as they saw the lawyers, the papers. Lawyers? Chloe snapped, her voice sharp. What in the hell is this? Sarah stepped smoothly into the doorway. Mr. Peterson. Miss Peterson. I'm Sarah Chin, this is David Miller. We are counsel for your parents, John and Eleanor Peterson. Her voice was clear, ringing through the suddenly silent room. We're here to address the matter of substantial financial malfeasance, provable undue influence and actionable elder financial abuse perpetrated by you against our clients, resulting in the misappropriation of significant liquid assets and the fraudulent transfer of title for this property. The blood drained from Mark's face, leaving it a sickly gray. Chloe gasped, stumbling back as if struck. Richard let out an audible gasp. Carol stared, mouth agape in horror. Fraudulent? That's insane. Mark blustered, trying to regain control. They wanted to help us. They signed willingly. David stepped forward, holding up a thick binder. Willingly? Or under calculated emotional distress and explicit misrepresentation of facts? We have forensic accounting tracing every dollar from your father's liquidated retirement funds into your personal accounts, Mr. Peterson, funding assets entirely unrelated to any legitimate investment. We have documented proof, Ms. Peterson, of your fraudulent inflation of business expenses using the loans secured by your parents. He slapped a stack of bank statements onto the nearby coffee table. Furthermore, we have expert testimony regarding the unethical, likely illegal, conduct of the attorney who facilitated the transfer of this house deed while neglecting his fiduciary duty to your parents. Sarah pressed on, relentless. Our settlement offer is non-negotiable. Return of the unencumbered title within 48 hours. A legally binding agreement for the full restitution of $473,000, secured against your assets, commencing within 30 days. She paused, her gaze sweeping over their stunned faces, and the equally stunned faces of our family and friends. The alternative is the immediate filing of a civil suit seeking maximum damages, and the simultaneous delivery of our entire investigative file to the district attorney's office with a strong recommendation for criminal prosecution. Mark looked physically ill, swaying slightly. Chloe burst into ragged, panicked sobs. No. You can't, she shrieked, whirling towards Arthur. You. How could you do this? You're nobody. You're just their pathetic poor friend. Arthur rose slowly from his chair. The quiet, unassuming mask fell away completely, revealing the controlled fury beneath. Poor? He echoed, his voice dangerously soft, yet carrying immense weight. No, Chloe. I'm not poor. My net worth could absorb yours and your brother's inflated egos without noticing. But my real wealth was never in banks. It was in loyalty, integrity, kindness. His eyes, hard as diamonds, bored into them. You looked your parents in the eye, the people who sacrificed everything for you, and called them parasites. You stripped them of their home, their savings, even their food, and left them to suffer. He took a step closer, his voice dropping to a low growl that filled the room. The only parasites in this house are standing right where you are. Utter silence descended, thick and heavy. Chloe crumpled, sobbing hysterically. Mark stood frozen, paralyzed by shock and terror, his arrogance shattered into a million pieces. Our friends and family stared, horrified, finally understanding the depth of the betrayal. The empire built on lies had just imploded. And the raw, potent satisfaction of witnessing it, it was the first clean breath I'd taken in years. The fallout was immediate and brutal. Cornered, exposed, and facing ruin, Mark and Chloe signed everything Arthur's lawyers put in front of them. Within 48 hours, the deed to our house was back solely in our names. A strict repayment schedule for the nearly $500,000 they'd taken was established, enforced by liens on their cars, Mark's remaining stocks, and Chloe's now-defunct business equipment. Selling those assets became their immediate, humiliating reality. News of their actions spread like wildfire through our extended family and community. The shame was immense. We heard indirectly that Mark was fired from his finance job for conduct unbecoming. Chloe's business contacts vanished overnight. They became social pariahs, their carefully constructed images destroyed. They left one voicemail, a rambling, self-pitying mess of excuses and desperate apologies. We deleted it without listening to the end. Forgiveness wasn't on the table. Trust, once shattered so completely, can't be glued back together. Life found a new rhythm. Quieter, simpler, but secure. Arthur, no longer needing his disguise around us, became an even more integral part of our lives. He firmly refused any talk of repaying the legal costs. Consider it an investment in decency, he'd said with a smile. He connected us with a trusted financial planner who helped set up a secure trust, ensuring we'd never be vulnerable again. We still live in our home, surrounded by familiar things, but the shadows are gone. The fear is gone. The wound of our children's betrayal remains, a dull ache beneath the surface, a reminder of how love can be twisted by greed and entitlement. It's a scar we'll carry, but it no longer dictates our days. We learned the devastating cost of blind faith, even in our own blood. But we also learned the profound power of true friendship, the kind that arrives unexpectedly, demands nothing, and shines a light in the absolute darkest of times. Looking around my home now, sitting with Eleanor, sometimes sharing a simple meal with Arthur, there's a sense of peace I thought was lost forever. We didn't just get our house back. We got our dignity back. We survived. And in the end, that's the only victory that truly matters.